Okay, so video 4 is still continuing narrative writing, but it's all about characterization. So this is the last skill for the week that we are going to review. And we're still working with the short story 7th grade. So characterization, if you remember, are the character traits and the qualities that are revealed by a character's appearance, spoken words, actions, and thoughts. Character traits are also revealed by how a character affects other characters in the story. So this is the definition of characterization. You'll remember from reading and from our ELA quarters that there is direct and indirect characterization. So direct characterization is that they tell the reader, she was a cheery, always upbeat person. So that's the author telling you explicitly what that character is like. Gives a broad sweep, so summarizing a personality in a line or two. Okay, useful for first details. So as a writer, you would use direct characterization towards the beginning of your book or when you're introducing somebody and you are giving them like what they look like, right? And she's saying, okay, she's tall with blonde hair. So that's where you can put images into your readers' minds. Okay, that's direct characterization. Indirect characterization is that you are showing the reader what the character is like, not telling them. So with direct characterization, you said that this character is tall and blonde. But indirect characterization is that you're going to show them. So maybe saying, Lucy towered over Billy and asked, demanded for him to give her his lunch. So in this indirect characterization, the word towered means to show the reader that Lucy is taller than the boy. And when you use the word demanded, then now we have a sense of maybe her personality. But the author's not outright saying that she's tall and maybe rude. So that's indirect characterization. This is where the author's showing us with the speech of the characters. Maybe they're showing us the internal dialogue, the thoughts that the character has, the effect that the character has on other characters in the book, and then the actions of that character. So if the character said, Bruce ran into the burning building and saved the kitten, he's telling us one of the actions. He's showing us an action from Bruce. And so we're able to infer that Bruce is a hero or he's brave. Okay, so this is how the authors will do indirect characterization. And this is useful for the development of your characters and it makes it more complex. So as you're thinking about the characters of your short story, think about how can you meld direct and indirect characterization together. So, for example, this is an example from Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. And this is an example of how J.K. Rowling is giving characterization. So, perhaps it had something to do with living in a dark cupboard, but Harry had always been small and skinny for his age. He looked even smaller and skinnier than he really was because all he had to wear were old clothes of Dudley's. And Dudley was about 4 times bigger than he was. Harry had a thin face, knobbly knees, black hair, and bright green eyes. He wore round glasses held together with a lot of Scotch tape because of all the times Dudley had punched him on the nose. The only thing Harry liked about his own appearance was a very thin scar on his forehead that was shaped like a lightning bolt. And so this is mostly a passage explaining what type of characterization, indirect or direct. If you said direct, then you would be correct because the author is clearly showing you exactly what Harry looks like. There's nothing that is leaving us to the imagination. He wears these baggy clothes, he's skinny, he's pale, he's small for his age, he's got this scar, he's got dark hair, green eyes, he wears glasses. So that is direct characterization. But within these sentences, you also see and can think about indirect characterization, especially when you're thinking about Dudley. So indirectly, J.K. Rowling is giving us actions that Dudley gives. Dudley had punched Harry on the nose repeatedly. So we can infer that Dudley is kind of a rude, nasty guy. right? And that's not the author outright telling us Dudley is nasty. That is the author giving us an action and how another character relates. And so you'll see these examples in the text that you read where the author is giving us direct and indirect characterization. Okay, hopefully you guys understand that and that this is just a good, easy review. How does Gary Soto show characterization in his short story? So hopefully you have his story pulled up, but there's also a mix of indirect and direct characterization in the 7th grade story that you guys read. So for example, when Victor at the end of the story says, and Mr. Bueller is a good guy, that is direct characterization for Mr. Bueller. Mr. Bueller is kind. We know that because of what Victor said. But indirect characterization to see if Mr. Bueller is kind is when Gary Soto says, Mr. Bueller shuffled through the papers on his desk. He smiled and hummed as he sat down to work. He remembered his college years when he dated a girlfriend and borrowed cars. So this is Gary Soto indirect characterizing Mr. Bueller. We know he's kind because he's not calling out Victor for not knowing French in front of the girl that he likes. So these are two examples of where the author has given you direct characterization with Victor saying Mr. Bueller is a good guy, and indirect characterization where Gary is writing a passage of how the teacher didn't call out Victor for not knowing something. For another example is that Victor is insecure and nervous around Teresa. So the author shows direct and indirect characterization. So direct is saying, great rose bushes of red bloomed on Victor's cheeks. A river of nervous sweat ran down his palms, and he felt awful. So this is the author telling you what Victor looked like and how he felt, okay, and that he was sweaty, right? So these are all things that you're getting a picture in your mind. But also, you have this internal dialogue. She smiled and said, hi, Victor. He smiled back and said, yeah, that's me. His brown face blushed. Why hadn't he said, hi, Teresa, or how was your summer, or something nice? So this is indirect characterization because Victor is thinking. This is his thoughts, okay? So he's not the author's not outrightly saying Victor was stupid and embarrassed. It's giving you guys the dialogue. Okay, so hopefully you guys understand indirect and direct characterization. I will be looking for that in your short stories. The last little bit of practice that I want you guys to do before your final quiz of the week is to think and complete this chart for Teresa. So think about indirect and direct characterizations for Teresa and fill out this chart. It doesn't have to be a formal thing. You can just jot down some bullet points and then maybe write a D next to anything that's direct and an I that's anything next to indirect, and just send me a picture or an email showing me what character traits you found for Teresa for 7th grade. And that's the last video for the review for this week.